A homeless man was found sleeping behind the gates of Graceland. Security was about to call the police and have him arrested for trespassing, but when Elvis Presley saw who this man really was and heard his story, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever and prove that the king of rock and roll had a heart bigger than his fame. It was August 3rd, 1975, around 2:30 in the morning, and Elvis Presley couldn't sleep. This wasn't unusual. By 1975, Elvis's sleep schedule was completely irregular, a combination of prescription medication, performance schedules, and the general chaos of being Elvis Presley. He often found himself awake at odd hours, wandering the halls of Graceland, watching television, or just sitting in his music room thinking. That particular night, Elvis had walked out onto the back grounds of Graceland just to get some air and clear his head. The Memphis summer night was warm and humid, and the cicadas were singing their endless song. Elvis was wearing a robe and slippers, just wandering his property, when he noticed something unusual near the back fence, close to the property line that bordered a wooded area. There was a shape. A person. Someone was sleeping on his property, just inside the fence line, partially hidden by some bushes. Elvis's first instinct was to call security. Graceland had security guards patrolling 24/7. It was necessary given Elvis's fame and the constant stream of fans who would do anything to get close to him. But something made Elvis hesitate. Instead of calling out or going back inside, he walked closer, quietly, wanting to see who this person was before making a decision. As Elvis got closer, he could see it was a man, probably in his late 20s or early 30s, although it was hard to tell in the darkness. He was thin, very thin, and his clothes were dirty and torn. He had a small backpack being used as a pillow, and he was sleeping fitfully, twitching and making small sounds like he was having a nightmare. What caught Elvis's attention most was what he could see, even in the dim light. The man was wearing what looked like an old military jacket with patches that Elvis recognized. This wasn't just a homeless man. This was a veteran. Elvis stood there for a moment, looking at this man sleeping on his property, and something in his heart broke. He'd been thinking a lot about veterans lately, about the Vietnam War that had finally ended just a few months earlier, about the young men who'd come back broken and forgotten, about the protests and the division and the pain that war had caused to so many families. Instead of calling security, Elvis did something that would seem crazy to most people. He sat down on the ground, a few feet away from the sleeping man, and waited. After about 10 minutes, the man stirred, caught in whatever nightmare was playing in his head. He jerked awake suddenly, sitting up with a gasp, his eyes wild and unfocused. It took him a moment to realize where he was, and when he saw Elvis Presley sitting a few feet away, watching him calmly, he froze completely. "It's okay," Elvis said softly, keeping his voice gentle and non-threatening. "You're not in trouble. I just want to talk." The man stared at Elvis, his mouth hanging open. You're Elvis Presley." "I am, and you're sleeping on my property. Mind telling me your name and how you ended up here?" The man looked around wildly like he was considering running. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just so tired, and I saw the fence, and I thought if I could just rest for a few hours. I'll leave right now. I'm sorry." He started to gather his backpack, his hand shaking, but Elvis held his hand. "I said you're not in trouble. I just want to know your name." The man hesitated, then sat back down slowly. Tommy Reeves. Staff Sergeant Tommy Reeves. Or I was. Before." "Before what?" Elvis asked. Tommy looked down at his hands. "Before Vietnam. Before everything went to hell. I know." Elvis nodded slowly. "You're a veteran." "Yes, sir. Served 2 tours. Came back in '73. Been trying to figure things out since then." "And by figuring things out, you mean you've been living on the streets?" Tommy's face flushed with shame. "Yes, sir. About 8 months now. Lost my job, lost my apartment, lost everything, really. Elvis sat quietly for a moment, studying this man. Tommy Reeves looked broken, not just physically, although the thinness and the dirt and the obvious exhaustion told their own story. But there was something in his eyes, something haunted and lost that Elvis recognized. He'd seen it before in other veterans, in men who'd come back from war carrying invisible wounds that nobody seemed to know how to heal. "Tommy," Elvis said, "have you eaten today?" The question seemed to surprise Tommy. I had some food from a dumpster behind a restaurant yesterday. Or maybe that was 2 days ago? I lose track sometimes." Elvis stood up, brushing off his robe. "Come on, let's get you some food." Tommy looked up at him, confused. "What? I don't understand." "I'm inviting you into my home," Elvis said, extending his hand to help Tommy up. "You're a veteran. You served your country. You shouldn't be sleeping on the ground behind anyone's fence, least of all mine. Come on." Tommy didn't take Elvis's hand at first. He just stared at it like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Now come on before I change my mind and call security after all." That got a small, hesitant smile from Tommy. He took Elvis's hand and let himself be pulled to his feet. As they walked towards Graceland's back entrance, Tommy kept looking over at Elvis like he expected him to disappear or reveal that this was all a cruel joke. But Elvis just led him through the grounds, past the pool, and into the back door of Graceland. The house was quiet. Most of Elvis's staff and friends who often stayed over were asleep. Elvis led Tommy through the kitchen, where he started pulling out food from the refrigerator. Leftover fried chicken, potato salad, bread, butter, some fruit. "Sit," Elvis said, pointing to the kitchen table. "Eat." Tommy sat down slowly, like he wasn't quite sure this was real. When Elvis set the plate of food in front of him, Tommy's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say," Tommy whispered. "Don't say anything yet," Elvis told him. "Just eat. When's the last time you had a real meal?" "I don't remember," Tommy admitted. "A week? Maybe more?" Elvis watched as Tommy started eating, slowly at first, then faster as his body remembered what real food tasted like. He ate like someone who'd forgotten what it meant to be full, and Elvis just kept bringing more food until Tommy finally held up his hand. "I can't eat anymore," Tommy said. "I'll get sick if I do. My stomach's not used to this much food." Elvis nodded and sat down across from him at the table. "Okay, now tell me your story, all of it. How does a staff sergeant end up sleeping behind Graceland?" Tommy was quiet for a long moment, and Elvis could see him struggling with whether to trust this strange situation. Finally, he started talking. "I enlisted in '68, right after high school. Thought I was doing the right thing, Thought I was being patriotic. Did my basic training, got sent to Vietnam in '69. First tour was hell, but I made it through. Came back for 6 months, then volunteered for a second tour because I felt like I had to. Like I had to go back for the guys who didn't make it." Tommy's hands were shaking as he talked. "Second tour was worse. Saw things I can't forget. Things I see every night when I close my eyes. Lost my best friend to a landmine. Held him while he died. He was 20 years old." Elvis listened without interrupting, his face showing the pain he felt hearing this. "Came back in '73. Thought I'd be okay. Thought I could just come home and pick up where I left off. But nothing was the same. People didn't want to hear about Vietnam. They didn't want to know what we'd been through. Some people called us baby killers. Some people spit at us. Most people just ignored us." Tommy wiped his eyes with his dirty sleeve. I tried to get a job, tried to use my GI Bill for school, but the nightmares were so bad I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't function. I'd hear a car backfire and I'd hit the ground. I'd see someone in the grocery store wearing the wrong color shirt and I'd think they were Viet Cong. I was losing my mind. PTSD, Elvis said quietly. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Tommy looked surprised that Elvis knew the term. Yeah, that's what the VA doctor said. Said I needed treatment, needed therapy, needed medication. But the VA system is so overwhelmed, so underfunded. I got put on a waiting list. 6 months, they said. Maybe longer. By then, I'd lost my job. Couldn't keep it together long enough to hold down work. Lost my apartment when I couldn't pay rent. My parents, they tried to help me, but they didn't understand what was wrong with me. They thought I was just being lazy, just making excuses. We fought. I left. Ended up on the streets. You want to know the worst part? I survived 2 tours in Vietnam. Survived firefights and ambushes and mortars and everything that war threw at me. I survived all of that. And then I came home and my own country threw me away like garbage. Elvis's face was wet with tears. He wasn't trying to hide it. That's not right, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That's not right at all. No, it's not. But that's how it is for a lot of us. I've met dozens of other veterans living on the streets. Guys who served their country and came back to nothing. No jobs, no homes, no help. Just nightmares and pain and people looking at us like we're crazy or dangerous. Are you getting any help now? Any treatment? Tommy laughed bitterly. I'm sleeping behind Elvis Presley's fence. What do you think? Elvis stood up abruptly, started pacing the kitchen. Tommy watched him nervously, worried he'd said something wrong, that Elvis was going to kick him out after all. But Elvis wasn't angry at Tommy. He was angry at the situation, at the system, at a country that could send young men to war and then abandon them when they came home broken. This is what's going to happen, Elvis said, turning to face Tommy. First, you're going to take a shower and get some clean clothes. Then, you're going to sleep in a real bed in one of the guest rooms upstairs. And tomorrow, well, today, since it's already almost done, we're going to figure out how to get you some real help. I can't accept that. I can't just, yes, you can, Elvis interrupted. You're going to accept it because I'm offering it and because you deserve it. And because if I don't help you, then what the hell is the point of having all this? He gestured around at Graceland, at the mansion and the wealth and the privilege he'd been blessed with. But why? Tommy asked, his voice breaking. Why would you do this for me? You don't know me. I'm nobody. Elvis walked over and put his hands on Tommy's shoulders, looking him directly in the eyes. You're not nobody. You're a man who served his country. You're a veteran who came home to a country that should have taken better care of you. And you're a human being who deserves dignity and respect and help. That's why. Tommy broke down completely then, sopping into his hands while Elvis stood there with his hands on Tommy's shoulders, letting him cry out years of pain and frustration and abandonment. When Tommy finally got control of himself, Elvis led him upstairs to one of Graceland's many guest rooms. He found some clean clothes, one of his own outfits that would probably be too big but would work for now, and showed Tommy to the bathroom.
Take as long as you need, Elvis told him. There's soap, shampoo, towels, everything you need. I'll be downstairs. When you're done, get some sleep. We'll talk more after you've rested. Tommy stood in the doorway of that beautiful bathroom, looking at the clean towels and the expensive fixtures, and he couldn't quite process that this was real. "Mr. Presley? Elvis? I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Elvis said. "Just take care of yourself. Get clean, get some rest. That's thanks enough." After Tommy went into the bathroom, Elvis stood in the hallway for a moment, thinking. Then he went back downstairs to the phone in his office and started making calls. First, he called his personal physician, Dr. Nikopoulos. Dr. Nick, as everyone called him. Even though it was 4 a.m., Dr. Nick answered on the third ring. "Elvis, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Doc," Elvis said. "But I need you to come to Graceland first thing this morning. I've got someone here who needs medical attention, a homeless veteran. I want him checked out completely. Physical health, mental health, everything." Dr. Nick, used to Elvis's impulsive acts of generosity, didn't even question it. "I'll be there at 8. Does he need immediate emergency care?" "I don't think so," Elvis said, "but he's been living on the streets for 8 months. He's malnourished, probably has other issues, and he's got PTSD from Vietnam." "I'll bring what I need," Dr. Nick assured him, "and I'll make some calls to specialists who can help with the PTSD." "Thanks, Doc." Elvis hung up and made his next call to his accountant. "I need you to set up a fund. I want to be able to pay for medical treatment, housing, whatever's needed. Just set it up so I can write checks as needed." The accountant, also used to Elvis's generosity, said he'd have it ready by the end of the day. Elvis made a few more calls, to a therapist who specialized in PTSD, to a real estate agent about finding housing, to a friend who ran an employment agency. By the time the sun was coming up over Graceland, Elvis had assembled a team of people who would help Tommy Reeves put his life back together. Around 7 a.m., Elvis heard movement upstairs. He went up to find Tommy standing in the hallway, looking almost unrecognizable. He'd showered, shaved, put on the clean clothes Elvis had left for him. He looked like a different person, still thin and haunted, but cleaner, more human somehow. "Feel better?" Elvis asked. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Tommy admitted. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up behind that fence again, and this will all have been my imagination." "You're not dreaming," Elvis assured him. "This is real. Now come on, let's get some breakfast. Then we've got a busy day ahead of us." Over breakfast, which Elvis's cook Mary made specially, piling Tommy's plate high with eggs and bacon and toast, Elvis laid out the plan he'd put together. "Dr. Nick is coming at 8 to give you a complete medical checkup. He's also bringing information about PTSD treatment programs. Then we're going to get you set up with a therapist who specializes in working with veterans. And we're going to find you a place to live, a real place, not a shelter, a real apartment where you can start building your life again." Tommy stared at him. "I can't afford any of that. I don't have any money. I can't—" "You don't need money," Elvis said. "I'm taking care of it." "But that's thousands of dollars. It's nothing," Elvis interrupted. "It's pocket change compared to what you've already paid serving your country. Consider it back pay for service rendered." "I can't let you do this," Tommy protested, even as his tears ran down his face again. "It's too much." "Yes, you can let me do this," Elvis said firmly. "And you know why? Because if you don't let me help you, then I'm just some rich guy sitting in a big house while veterans suffer on the streets. I can't live with that. So you're going to let me help you, and you're going to get better, and eventually you're going to help someone else. That's how it works." Tommy couldn't speak. He just nodded, overwhelmed by this kindness he'd never expected, never even imagined possible. Dr. Nick arrived at 8 and spent 2 hours examining Tommy. The news wasn't great. Tommy was severely malnourished, had untreated dental problems, a respiratory infection from sleeping outside, and showed all the classic signs of severe PTSD, including insomnia, hypervigilance, and intrusive memories. But Dr. Nick was optimistic. He said all of this is treatable. It's going to take time and it's going to take work, but you can get better. You can have a normal life again. "Really?" Tommy asked, like he didn't dare believe it. "Really," Dr. Nick confirmed. But you have to commit to the treatment. You have to do the therapy, take the medication if needed, show up for appointments. Can you do that? Yes, Tommy said immediately. Yes, I can do that.
Elvis hugged him. You already are, brother. You already are. The story of Elvis and Tommy Reeves became one of those legends in Memphis. A story people told to illustrate who Elvis really was when the cameras weren't rolling and the stage lights were off. Tommy did go to school. He got his degree in social work. He married Sarah. They had 2 kids. And Tommy spent the next 30 years of his life working with homeless veterans, helping them access services, advocating for better VA care, being the person for others that Elvis had been for him. Elvis and Tommy remained friends until Elvis's death in 1977. Tommy was devastated by the loss, but he channeled his grief into his work, determined to honor Elvis's memory by continuing the mission they'd started together. At Elvis's funeral, Tommy was there, standing in the back, paying his respects to the man who'd saved his life. Afterward, he approached Priscilla and Lisa Marie to offer his condolences. "Your father was the greatest man I ever knew," Tommy told him. "Not because he was famous, not because he was talented, but because he saw me when I was invisible. He helped me when I was helpless. He gave me back my humanity when I'd lost it. That's what made him great." In 1982, 5 years after Elvis's death, Tommy opened a center for homeless veterans in Memphis. He called it Graceland House, in honor of the place where his life had changed, and in honor of the man who'd changed it. The center provided housing, medical care, therapy, job training, and support for veterans struggling with PTSD, addiction, homelessness, and other challenges. It operated on donations and grants, and Tommy ran it with the same dedication he'd brought to his own recovery. Over the next 3 decades, Graceland House helped thousands of veterans get back on their feet, and every single one of them heard the story of how it started, how Tommy Reeves had been found sleeping behind Elvis Presley's fence, and how one act of compassion had rippled outward to save thousands of lives. Tommy Reeves died in 2015 at the age of 71. At his funeral, more than 300 people showed up, veterans he'd helped, family members of veterans who'd turned their lives around, community members who'd been touched by his work. His son gave the eulogy and told the story his father had told him countless times. "My dad was lost. He'd given up hope. He'd survived a war, but was dying on the streets of his own country. And then Elvis Presley found him, and everything changed. My dad spent the rest of his life trying to be for others what Elvis was for him. A light in the darkness, a hand reaching down to pull someone up. A reminder that none of us are beyond redemption." Today, Graceland House is still operating in Memphis, still helping veterans, still carrying on the mission that started when Elvis found a homeless man behind his fence and decided to help instead of calling the police. On the wall of Graceland House's main office is a photo, a candid shot someone took of Elvis and Tommy sitting on the steps of Graceland, both of them laughing at something. Under the photo is a plaque that reads, "In memory of Elvis Presley, who showed us that greatness isn't measured by fame or fortune, but how you treat those who can't do anything for you. And in honor of Staff Sergeant Tommy Reeves, who took the second chance he was given and spent his life giving second chances to others." The story of Elvis and Tommy reminds us that sometimes the most important things we do happen in private, in small moments that nobody sees. Elvis could have called security that night. He could have had Tommy arrested for trespassing. He could have ignored the problem and gone back to bed. Instead, he sat down on the ground next to a homeless veteran and asked his name. That one act of compassion, that one moment of seeing another human being suffering and choosing to help, set in motion a chain of events that saved thousands of lives. Tommy never forgot what Elvis did for him. He built his entire life's work on that foundation, and in doing so, he ensured that Elvis's legacy of compassion continued long after Elvis was gone. This is what real greatness looks like. Not the sold-out concerts or the hit records or the movies or the fame, but the quiet moment at 2:30 in the morning when someone who has everything stops to help someone who has nothing. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, could have just been remembered for his music. Instead, he's remembered for moments like this, moments when he used his wealth and his position to genuinely help people, not for publicity or credit, but simply because it was the right thing to do. And Tommy Reeves, who could have just been another statistic, another homeless veteran lost to the system, instead became a lifelong advocate who helped thousands of others find their way back from the darkness. That's the power of compassion. That's the power of second chances. That's the power of seeing someone else's humanity even when they can't see it themselves. If this story of redemption and compassion moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of second chances and seeing the humanity in everyone. Have you ever been helped by a stranger in an unexpected moment? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more inspiring true stories about the moments that reveal the best of human nature.